That good? Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. Billy, would you mind to open us up with a word of prayer, please? Amen. Thank you. Okay, we have the minutes from our last meeting to review. Give you just a second to look over those, see if there's any corrections, additions, or anything that you want to bring to our attention about those minutes. Have a motion, we accept them. Do we have a second? All in favor? Okay, we've got the minutes passed. Okay, we have the financial statement from me, the treasurer. Just a summary of second quarter on there. We're going along pretty well, as you can see. Most lines were still in the positive. We've gone over a little with vacation, Bible school, revival, and egg hunt line. We went over just a little there. So all in all, things are moving along well. Our average weekly offering is down a little bit, but we seem to still be holding our own there. And there's the balances for reserve. You can read on those. And we're taken up again by donation for our fundraiser. I don't think I've got that on there. Do I? No. But it was in the bulletin today. I think we have about 1,175 or something on the donations so far. Any questions about that? I think we did get from Greenwood. I don't remember anything from Afton. Okay. All right. So that's just kind of a statement of where we are with that. And as far as old business, church repairs completed since the last meeting. Parking lot stripped and handicap parking spaces were clearly marked. That was done in April. First aid kit items replaced that were outdated. We had 3 pieces on that, and that was done in June. Still pending is the refrigerator in the kitchen. Still needs to be looked at. Light box around the glass window, that's installed but still yet to be completed, and Bob's on that one. And we did do some donations from our mission fund this quarter. Gave $300 to a nursing home resident at Laughlin Healthcare for dentures, and I do know that the process has started for her to get those dentures. She's very excited about it and has thanked us many times for that. Medical needs for a family that with ongoing hospitalizations were also donated, $300 for each of those. Any concerns or questions about any of the old business? Guess we'll just plug along on that refrigerator. I don't know. Has anybody looked at it? I don't know who to even look. Okay, well, that'd be good. Maybe that can be looked at soon. Okay, as far as new business, we were going to see how you all felt about moving this administrative board meeting to the second Sunday of each quarter. Right now, it's on the 1st. That really does cause a little bit of problem, especially with July, with that holiday. That's hairy, getting all the reports together, and a lot of times you don't get the bank statement right away to do your figures and so forth. And seems to in January it's hard too, because you're just finishing out the year and then you've got all new things. So how do you all feel about moving that to the second Sunday of each quarter instead of the first? Okay. Do we have a... It would make it easier on me, probably Jennifer too. Okay. We have a second on that? Nancy second that. All in favor of moving it to the second Sunday? Anyone opposed? Great. Thank you. We'll move that to the second Sunday. Our second item is mowing the church property. The cemetery voted to pay Ronnie and Pat Crum $20 more per mowing, since they have not had a raise in years, since 2006. That's kind of embarrassing to say. You know, gas is higher. It has gone up since 2006. They mowed 33 times in 2021, and currently we pay them $50 per mowing. The cemetery now pays $170 per mowing, 24 times they mowed there in 2021. So, looking at a little bit of a raise there for the mowing. Any discussion on that? It was $20 more per mowing. So it went up like $20 per mow. I know.
Same 13% increase in the $6.
Not too bad. Okay, have a motion that we increase it. Second, and that increase will be what percentage then?
But if the percentage is like $6, the question is, you want to do it $56 or you want to round it to 60?
60, okay. So we want to make that motion say increase it to $60 per mow? Is that realistic?
It's $1,980.
Okay. And we know it varies a little bit with weather and so forth.
So it's $330.
Okay.
If you do the 10.
Do we want to modify that motion to include that amount? Patsy, what do you think? Yes? Okay. Second? Okay. All in favor of that raise? Anyone opposed? Okay. Good deal. Nobody opposed. Next, we're going to discuss what to do with our own laptop computer. This is the one that Kyle was using. Kyle, you might want to just tell a little bit about that computer and...
Sure. I don't know the exact year we bought it.
2014.
2014. So almost 10 years old, it's 8 years old. The reason we replaced everything, obviously, is to increase capabilities of video and everything. But the other side of that was the computer was very slow. We'd have to reboot all the time. And not a solid computer. And if you keep up with technology, and
So,
$10. I mean, that, you're not, I mean,
yeah, what do you do with it? And
that's enough.
we have a motion for that, or is it? Well, Billy, would you like to buy it? Well,
We get a chance to give it away.
right, you could give it away, or Billy, do you want it?
You give it away, you have to buy the fund, you have to go back to the gifts, and we're not that child saying $10, but we don't know.
Right.
We just wanna make sure that all the data is locked off of it, that's why, really something. When we get rid of our computers, we make sure we destroy, we wipe them all first, but we destroy the hard drive, because there's still stuff on the hard drive that can be recovered. And so we make sure we do that as well before we take it to the recycling facility.
Mhm.
So it will have to be wiped off.
Yeah.
We try to do it.
Well, we have a motion that we want to wipe that thing clean and take it to the recycle.
Okay, Lola,
Well,
dig it in Franklin, see what. Thank you. She said there's a refurbishment at ATSU,
okay.
and then they give schools or, she said, brand new Franklin competitions and she said we would pursue that route first.
Well, yeah.
Okay? All right, so we'll pursue that first, and then if that does not work out, we will do, I will ask you when the charges are in, and then we'll.
Okay.
Step,
That sounds good. So that's our motion.
yes,
We have a second.
no second.
Okay, all in favor of that path? Okay, anyone opposed? All right, good deal. Next, we have plans for the ice cream supper. And currently, it is scheduled for August the 27th is the date, so that's coming up. Next month is August. In case you didn't know. So, plans for the ice cream supper. Boy, that snuck up on me. We did pretty well with that last year with a small crew. Last year, we donated the proceeds to Abby for her school. And her school matched the contribution that we were able to give, and the school matched it. So, let's have some discussion about the ice cream supper. Well, it's on the schedule, so I guess, do we want to have it? If we want to have it, do we have anybody that was coordinating that? Or I don't think we did.
Jim did it last
Jim did it last year. Come in, preacher. We've made it down to the ice cream supper. I guess do we want to do that again this year? Do you think we're capable and able to pull that off? I don't know. I see a lot of faces like, I don't know.
year with the ice cream. You know,
Do we have a project in mind for this year? Is there something in particular that needs our attention? Well, this is true. This is true. Well, not that I know of. Is she? Well, do we want to put that on hold?
I do feel like Jim will lead it again. He had said last year that, it would be a learning process for him. He took 1 million notes. Kudos to Jim for that. But I do think he would lead it again. We've just got to make the decision if we want to pursue it or.
Yeah, is Jim, will that give him enough time to feel better and be able to do what he?
Well, you could plan it from on paper and ask people to do things. But then, I don't know. I don't know what his recovery time is. I don't know if a date change is needed. I don't know what the answer is. I just know our crowd was, I think we planned for like 200, and I don't know that we had 100.
We just had some good donations because of the cause. Wait till after Labor Day. Well, do we want to look for a date after Labor Day and potentially move it, revisit it?
Or do we want to think about being one of the earlier ones in the spring and move it to that if we feel like we need it? I'm like Kathy. I think we need to look at all these other things to make decisions financially about what we may or may not need to do.
Okay. You want to put that as a motion? Wait. We have a second? Okay. All in favor of moving that to spring? Oops. And see what we need to do at that point? Okay. All opposed? Okay, move that ice cream to the spring. Okay, next is plans for Vacation Bible School. It is not yet scheduled. Is it our year to host that?
I'm not sure Afton has, they don't really talk too much to us about it. The last time we did Bible school was 2 years ago during COVID, and it was that put together the kit, send it to the homes, and Afton did give us a name or two possibly, and we delivered it. But we didn't do one last year, mostly because of the bicentennial. We had so much going on, in the fall and September, and it just seemed like too much to think about. So I don't know if Afton has kids that would attend Bible school. No. So I'm sure it would just be us. We can reach out, but
we don't have many either. We have a few. maybe we could just do a special Sunday school lesson for the ones that we have one day and make it like their little mini Bible school event.
I was going to suggest something very similar. I know for Halloween, Kathy, you did that
Oh, yeah,
little
that was
party in the basement. Maybe we just make it some seasonal things like that. Maybe 4 times a year that we just have this Sunday where we have a little party celebration, but a little lesson and things like that for our own children. I mean, we can invite others, but, you know, most of the time Vacation Bible School is an outreach. That's what you're trying to do. But I think we can all say that in the last 20, 30 years, I don't know one family that started coming here after we did Vacation Bible School. We reached a lot of people and kids, and I hope they learned a lot, and I think they, you know, had a great time. But in terms of them then turning to come to Stone Dam Church, it just never happened. So I kind of like the idea maybe of taking care of our own and having some smaller spread throughout.
I know that Austin thoroughly enjoyed the Halloween. She talked about that forever, and she really enjoyed that. So I think she would.
Right.
Right.
And our other problem is we never know how many are coming.
Mm-hmm.
So we sit and plan for 50 or 40 or 30 and 5 show up. Or we plan for 25 and 40 show up. There's just no way of knowing when you open those days up like that. And listen, I would vote to spend all the money all the time on as many kids as we can, but then it seems a waste to plan for 50 and 10 come.
Yeah.
Follow up on that, there's a lot of churches, small churches, over the last several years. Have gone away from the previous, gone to not, have
Manpower.
to do that, and does not have any kind of results to show, or very little results to show. And that VBS is one of those things, and I've looked into this, VBS takes a lot, one of the more time-consuming things the church does throughout the year. Takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of planning. And so it's not just a true VBS. What you guys are talking about is different, I'm sure, but, so that's, yeah, that is something good to follow up on, so to think about. So that's, I know a lot of pastors who have to stop having VBS because of that. The energy, the amount of time, you take all that and it takes away from something else you could be doing, something else you could invest in time in. So the bigger churches who have, you know, kids that are already in the church, you know, there's more incentive to them. Will put VBS on. So I'm not advocating to do one or the other, I'm just saying that's been a trend for a lot of smaller churches over the last 15 years.
Okay. We've had some discussion. Do we have a motion what to do with that Bible school? Just no Bible school or a mini?
So if we went to like the mini sessions on Sunday, you could do Easter and Halloween, which we've already done, and then you could add in there something in the summer, and then Christmas 4 times.
Yeah. Is that in a form of a motion that we go to mini sessions for children outreach? And to try to keep the children we have here.
Do that, and also, what Kathy was anything that she needs to do as far as preparing for that and doing that, since I'm supposed to be doing the VBS and haven't done that in 2 years.
Thank
Well,
you.
and maybe we can have a meeting here in September to plan the Halloween and Christmas, and then, you know, and everybody kind of take their roles. I know Vacation Bible School works best when everybody has a role.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
everybody comes together and uses their strengths, so.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion that we go to the little mini sessions here in the church. Do we have a second? Okay, all in favor? Okay, anyone opposed? All right, good deal. Okay. Next, we have these plans for spiritual discernment. And I'm going to turn that over to Jennifer. She's pulled a lot of this information together and has been at the meetings and so forth, and our pastor is here to help us understand this process. So I'm going to turn that over to them. Oh, okay, sure, Kathy.
And it has to do with the blessing box. I know that in our planning session, we agreed that we did that every other year. Some of them have done wonderful job. It's just amazing all the things that they drop blessing box. And this is something that we personally talked about and decided that we continue to do it. We have, I know when you give things to the blessing box, you give it a part, or I do, okay, I put it out there and whoever needs it will get it. But we do have a problem over there, and I see it as a problem. We have one lady that comes and takes everything from that box. At first, we didn't even know exactly where it was going or how, then Mark and Andrea talked to me about it, and they live right across from Ridgewood, and then, Lucas is mentioned it to me. And this lady, we did find out who she is, we know who she is. We know that she is a healer, which is a sickness, I realize too. But, and there was suggestions put out as to how we could help her, and so, mention this to Lucas about blessing box and how the steps that could be taken to help her. And they're not doing anything about it. And I just don't have, I don't feel like taking all that is being donated or donating over there and one person getting all of it. If she took it and needed it and used it, that would be one thing, but we know for sure that she is a healer and is being taken to her home or, and nothing being done with it.
It's just
And
sad.
It's so sad, and her situation is very sad. But at the same time, there's other people that come and want something and it's different. And I'm speaking from the times when something has, I don't know what, how Lincoln handles the rest of it or what Ashley does, but, I took all the stuff that was back here last week, and we had a lot of stuff that I took over there on Wednesday. I took it and barely got it up before the school started. And then I went and visited with Mark and Henry, and Henry was telling me yesterday, he said, Kevin, make sure it's gone, everything is gone. She comes at night, picked over there, 11 o'clock at night with flashlights. Lucas sent me a text even a couple of weeks ago, that she was going to say, while they're having church services, taking it. He sent me a picture and said, this is our fourth trip, LOL. And to me, it's not an LOL matter. It's not, I mean, I just, and I don't know how you all feel about it. If you want to continue, let's put it over there and put it in good faith that a few other people will get something. But I just did not want to continue to take it and not let you all know what is happening with that. And I don't think that Greenwood is going to address the situation. Lucas has said he didn't want any negative things going out, maybe on Facebook or something about, we put that out there and how we're not helping somebody, and I understand that too, but there again, I just wanted to bring it to the board and see what he wants to continue to do.
Okay.
That people would not
Right.
continue to give,
Well, I think the idea behind that blessing box is a great one, and I think the churches, embrace that, and want to help others in some way. if we're not accomplishing it there, are there any suggestions how we want to go with this? If we want to continue to do it, if we want to look for a different type of situation to donate to, or? Mm-hmm. All right. That is sad. It is sad. It's just, mm-hmm. Right.
It's Greenwood's blessing box, and how Greenwood wants to pay you at that time.
Right.
I'm just giving you something to say. One of the ways to draw the piece. So an idea would be to suspend what we're doing for a time, is an conversation. And then if not, then find something else to go in the park. Resources to monetarily, instead of anything doing, and resource center, what else we decide to do for it. Anything, I'm not really not.
And of course, the food bank is well established too, if you wanted to take up food, just to take to the food bank. So, all right, so we'll just suspend that and come back to it to see if we want to replace with a different donation type effort or resume the Greenwood box. Revisit that next meeting, I guess. Okay. All right. Okay.
What are we gonna do about the flower bed?
Flower bed.
I mean, you can't leave it out there like that, and Miss Fran is really good about taking care of it, but she's not able to do that by herself now, and it's gonna get in bad shape out there, and it's gonna be an eyesore.
Yeah, flower beds are great when you've got the time and energy to tend to them, but they do tend to take over if we just let them go. So, what options do we have there? Just
It's up to Fran, if she wants to hang on to it and try to take care of it, I
we've either got to tend it or take it up, however you pull it up, not have it. Right. You think it's a doable job to put it back in shape? Okay. Yeah. Do we want to have a day to have people to meet and try to work on it? Or hire somebody to work on it? Okay. Now we've had somebody tell me what to do, I'd be pulling up the flowers. I just, I don't know the difference in a lot of them. Okay. Right. Right. No, we don't want you hurt doing the flowers. Okay. Okay. Okay, well, Billy said he'd help some, and so see what's there, and okay. Okay, so we you just send out a day invitation then when you're gonna, when you know what you need done? Okay. Remember, some of us work, so it'll have to be a late evening if you get some of us. Okay. Anything else before we move on? All right. Gonna let Jennifer and the pastor take it from here.
While Jennifer's talking, we've got about 5 or 6, 7 people watching online. If you'll raise your hand, if you got something to say, this is not to embarrass you, to put you over in front of everybody, it's just so everybody can be part of the conversation. They can't be here, so if you'll raise your hand, I'll come by with the mic so that everybody can hear what you're saying. A lot of that was just watching Sarah and Sam there. So we get to hear everything.
All right. In your paperwork, the first thing I would like for you to look at, it's on the back of the financial report. If we'll look at that timeline at the top, these are some important things that we need to think about that should help drive our discussion today and our decisions today. Annual conference, the next Holston annual conference is in June of 2023. Churches that do vote to disaffiliate, it's only final when it's voted on by the annual conference. So for instance, if there's churches that are going through the process now to disaffiliate and they vote to do it, they are not officially out of the United Methodist system until it's voted on at annual conference. So that is next June. And any paperwork, any motions that have to be made must be made by March the 1st to be added to the agenda to be voted on. So March 1st is really a deadline we have to kind of look at to make sure if that's the path we're taking, that everything's done by then. Okay? The other thing that's important for us to think about is paragraph 2553 of the Book of Discipline. It was a statement that was put in at the special session of General Conference that was called in 2019. It's now being used by conservative churches to disaffiliate. It provides the churches a payout, okay, to retain their church property. And this piece of legislation ends December 31st, 2023. I don't think they intended it to end before the next General Conference would be, because remember, General Conference was supposed to be in 2022. Now it's been put off to 2024. So it's going to end before General Conference takes place. So there's this period of time where the one ends and there's nothing else out there that helps us with disaffiliation and the retention of our property. So General Conference is now scheduled for 2024. And then there was a protocol for grace and reconciliation through separation that was supposed to be voted on at General Conference 2024, but it's now dead. So there's really nothing hanging out there right now that they're talking about voting on or passing that would help churches with disaffiliation and the retention of their property. All right, so those are things I think we have to really think about as we look at this. Now, Pastor Rick has to leave at 1:30 if we're not finished, but it's my goal to be finished by then. But Rick, if you want to come forward, the next thing I want you to look at is the letter he wrote for us, and you have a copy of that, where he has told us, given us some good comparisons of the United Methodist Church versus the Global Methodist Church. And so I'm going to let him come forward at this time and discuss and take questions about that.
Moan. Good. Can you hear me? Good. All right. I don't know. I guess I'm assuming everybody got what I gave to Jennifer. The goal of that, it could have been 30 pages long. I tried to make it as succinct as possible, and yet give you enough information for you to get a good idea of not only the organizational differences between the two denominations, but also the theological differences, including the sexual ethics issue. That's the presenting issue right now. So I don't know if you've read it or had time to read through it all, if you have any questions. But I don't want to repeat or take up time talking about what's already been said in that handout. So if you want to open it up, if you have any thoughts or questions, or something's confusing, or you want a clarification on something, let me know.
Rick, I got a question. How big is this part of the UMC that does not believe in the virgin birth and so forth, that they feel it's just symbolic and it didn't really happen? How big a faction is that in the UMC?
I don't have that percentage of individuals who.
Well, okay, but
yeah.
Do you think it's a large? I mean.
Well, I can't, on any one theological issue, I can't pinpoint or tell you what I think, like on that particular issue. What I can tell you is that the reason this split's happening is because the United Methodist Church has been trending more progressive and more liberal over the last many years. This split isn't over minor issues. This is, when a denomination, and they're not calling it a split, or they say they're not calling it a split, but however this division within the United Methodist Church, when a denomination comes to this point, you can bet that it's some deeper, serious issues, and I don't want you to take my word. I want you to, that's why I gave you information and places where you can go and look on both sides, United Methodist, Global Methodist. Look at what people are saying and the differences. But I do think that the Methodist Church will continue to move more progressive. The goal, and nobody really is disputing this or doubting that this will happen, that the sexual ethics law that's on the Book of Discipline right now. It's in the Book of Discipline concerning the ban of ordaining homosexuals or marriage of homosexuals. That is most likely going to be removed. It takes a general conference to vote on that. But that's they tried to, that's what the general conference the special call conference in 2019 was trying to do, was to decide that issue. That particular conference came out 47 progressive, 53% conservative. So to vote to leave the language in, but with the conservative churches leaving, a lot of them, including out of the country constituencies like Africa and Indonesia, other places, those it's unlikely that there's going to be enough votes to keep that language in the Book of Discipline from the conservative standpoint. So issues regarding sexual ethics is the first and probably most pressing issue that will be addressed at the 2024 conference. Now, the theological issues, Bill, that you're bringing up, those are things that we've just seen. Right, and that's what you're hearing more from the conservative side. You're hearing the theological trend drift, if you want to use that word, towards a more liberal slant. And the problem is it's not so much the percentage as it is that those who are in leadership, and we're talking about not just the lay members, but leadership, pastors, all the way up to bishops, councils, all that leadership. There you'll find places or individuals who believe more progressive views, and they're not being disciplined per se. They're allowing to go on, and that's what I just wanted you to understand in that handout. That why is this not, being addressed, or why is this allowed to go on when so long, it wasn't. For many, many years it wasn't, and now it is. And I think the reason, and everybody on both sides is, aware that this is what's happening, is that the language, the thought, the way one views theology is moving, is shifting and changing. And so the Methodist Church, United Methodist Church, will come out and say, will we still stand by the doctrines in the Book of Discipline that hold to the virgin birth or, the resurrection? But then you have those out there who are ordained that are saying different things. Those who are being ordained who are not following the Book of Discipline when it comes to sexual ethics. It brings into question, and it's come to the point where there's just a dissatisfaction with the way the church is going. And so conservatives are saying, this is just going to get worse and worse, or more progressive and more progressive. United Methodist Church will say, no, that's not what's happening. There are a few issues that we disagree on. And so you have the two sides. But again, what has led to this isn't something minor. When you're talking about, many denominations have gone through a split. So when you're talking about a division, a split, or splintering, or however it's worded, you're talking about a significant disagreement, not just in organizational structure. When I say organizational structure, I'm talking about how leadership functions. Like if we have a Book of Discipline and leadership, or part of leadership, will not follow the church law in the Book of Discipline, then obviously that's a problem. In some view, that's what's been going on. It has been going on. Others argue differently, but there is a significant theological divide beyond just sexual ethics. So I just wanted you to be aware of that by individuals in the church. Why it's not being addressed, why it's being allowed, the things that have been written about and said. They can be disputed. They can say, well, that's just a fringe group out here on the outside, just trying to create trouble. But we're not where we are because of some fringe group that started of rebellion. It's been building and building and building. And so I wanted you to be aware of not just the organizational differences, but the theological differences, starting with the sexual ethics issue, because that's the presenting issue. It's not the only one. But Bill, as far as percentages, again, I don't, it's just it's a lack of more troubling than what's being said or what's being believed is a lack of, at least from the conservative side, a lack of discipline or addressing the issues and allowing them to go on. So that's been at the heart of the reason the Global Methodist Church has launched. And so, I mean, there's much more than that, but that, Bill, does that help?
The sexual issues are, speak for itself, the theological issue, if these people don't believe in that, if there's a fringe group or some group that don't believe in that, I've got to question their faith.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I gave you what I gave you, because I want you to understand that this isn't something that you vote whether or not, to build an extension on the church or what color the carpet is. This is much deeper and much more important than that. And when you're talking about theology, theological issues, and sexual ethics is part of that. Because I've personally, I'll just share with you, I've been told by other pastors that they don't see homosexuality as a sin, or they don't view it as a sin, or that it's a salvation issue. Those have been Methodist pastors within the United Methodist Church. I've heard that more than once. And so I'm not saying that's a majority. I'm just saying when you hear that and you see what went on in 2019 and, the fact that the protocol that was supposed to be and look forward to being voted on is probably not even going to be brought up. And that's the thing. Nobody knows what's going to happen in 2024. So that's the uncertainty. But there has been a trend. There's a reason there's this division. There is a conservative, traditional, and a more liberal, progressive divide in the United Methodist Church. And it's come to the point where if churches are not satisfied with the current and future direction of the United Methodist Church, now is the time that they need to make a decision about disaffiliating and transitioning to a more conservative denomination like the Global Methodist Church. You can wait. You can wait till 2024 and hope that something else comes along. But with the majority, or not the majority maybe, but a lot, I would say majority of the conservative churches, at least, especially outside this country, transitioning to global, it leaves a lot less voting constituency on that side. And so, I saw the fallout. You saw the fallout of 2019. The vote went conservative. That is what Jennifer said is the reason why that 2553, I think it's 2553, was put in to the Book of Discipline to allow those who were dissatisfied with the current Book of Discipline's language on sexual ethics, particularly with homosexuality. If you're dissatisfied with that, we'll go ahead and allow you to graciously leave with little, cost or effort. But it's been flipped because progressives and liberals have taken a stance, said, no, we're not going to leave. And now conservatives have said, well, then we'll just leave. A lot of conservatives. And I don't want to pit this as all conservatives versus all progressives, because there's some, there's always a percentage of both that are staying or that are decided. And there's a financial, aspect to this as well, but I don't know if that helped. Any other questions?
Jennifer and I have talked about it, and she disagrees with what I say, but not what I'm fixing to say first. Let me say, we're being held hostage by the United Methodist Church, financially hostage. And I don't think, maybe we don't have time to wait to 2024, but I don't believe the United Methodist Church wants to be responsible for all these empty properties if the people have to leave their church houses because they can't afford to get out. The UMC don't want that. I have no doubt they don't want to empty church houses to be the owners of them. And, you know, I don't know. Maybe we can't wait. I don't know.
Well, there is a deadline, at least with this paragraph in the Book of Discipline, for the disaffiliation process. After that, it's up in the air. And the problem is, if you want to disaffiliate, but you want to wait, and there's some churches saying, well, we'll wait till 24, we're not going to get in a hurry. That's a gamble, that's a risk. It could turn out even more advantageous for those who wanting to leave. It could turn out much less advantageous. You just don't know. So, why are so many conservative churches wanting to leave? Why is the Global Methodist Church already launched? You know, that itself is something to think about. What was the urgency? Why was, you know, and then the postponement of a general conference has upset so many people. Why is it postponed, and then postponed again? And there's been legal questions behind that. Was that even possible according to the Book of Discipline? So the problem is, it depends on who you talk to. You know, if you talk to somebody over here in the United Methodist Church, you're going to get one answer. If you talk to somebody over here, you're going to get another. You know, I don't have all the answers, but what I did want to give you was, you know, where we are, how we got to where we are. The reason for the introduction and what I gave you about the history is just to show you that we are Methodists, United Methodists now, but United Methodist has only been around, 54 years? Before that, it was the Methodist Church, and they were a merger from two other Methodists, the South and the Methodist Protestant, South and North and Methodist Protestant. Before that, you know, I didn't give you prior to that, but there's been a lot of different names under which Methodists have called themselves. So if you wonder about the Global Methodist Church, they're going to be Methodist. They're going to be Methodist in their theology and in their approach. They're following the Wesleyan doctrine. There's no question about that. Their book of doctrines and discipline is about a quarter of the thickness of our book of discipline in the United Methodist Church. They've streamlined it. But it's called the book of doctrines and discipline because they want to focus as much on the doctrine as they are the discipline. Again, a lot of dissatisfaction with the lack of discipline in the United Methodist Church about what's going on, and just not getting answers. You know, that's the biggest issue. You know, and I've heard your frustration. I've heard the other two churches' frustration. We can't get answers. We ask questions. We're getting a runaround, or we're getting this or that, and we don't believe what we're hearing, and all this distrust and all this, you know, has led to where really to a large degree where we are now. And so I can't, you know, if you were to ask me what I believe theologically, I'll be glad to tell you individually, but I can't tell you what to do as a church. That's up to you. You'll have to decide as a congregation, you know, what you feel God leading you to do. I'll tell you how the process will go. If there's a disaffiliation process started, there's a 3-month discernment. There will eventually have to be a church vote with I think the district superintendent has to be present for that. Only members on the roll who are currently on the roll and who are present will be counted at the church vote. The church vote will decide whether or not the church truly wants to disaffiliate. That number has to be 2/3 voting. In other words, 2/3 of the vote has to go one way or the other. So if you 2/3 vote to leave, or more, then the church has voted to leave. If you only get half and half, then you don't have enough to vote to disaffiliate. So that vote has to, happen down the road. But a church, according to the Book of Discipline, a church cannot have a church vote without the DS present anyway, but that's something that will have to happen. And so, again, there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of questions. I will tell you this, I think the Global Methodist Church is going to be a very sound, solid Methodist denomination. As with all new denominations, it'll probably take 2 to 5 years to get really going off the ground for them to have their first general or their first conference meetings to really solidify their book of doctrines and discipline. I've given you information there how the differences are organizational structure is, but also there won't be is an appointment system, except maybe at the very beginning. The Global Methodist Church said that they would help churches at the very beginning make sure that they have pastors. If it's a circuit and the circuit stays together, they have said that they will help the churches, circuits or individual churches, with a pastor initially. Now, once they do that, then it becomes on a call system, which the churches themselves will have to find their own pastor. The Global Methodist Church would be able to help with that, assist, give names, connections, just like it's very similar to Southern Baptist Church of God, other churches on a call system. So that's something that's going to be different. The property would go with the churches if the churches decide to disaffiliate. So Stone Dam disaffiliates and goes through the process, pays the dues, then the property now belongs to the congregation of Stone Dam and no longer falls under the trust clause of the United Methodist Church. And that's just going to, the Global Methodist Church has no trust clause. They have no interest in owning any church property. So that is definitely something that is different, will be different. But again, there's theological and there's just a lot of. I can tell you from what I've seen. I'll just tell you from what I've seen. I've seen the Methodist Church, and I've said this earlier, but I've seen the church has become more progressive over the years. They're not the only ones that's done that. There's been a lot of denominations that have split over liberal conservative views on issues, especially homosexuality. I think there's been at least 5 denominations that split over that issue alone. But our culture's going more progressive. You see what's happening in the churches. You hear the news. You see what's being said and here and there. And I encourage you to look at deeply at these things and pray about them, because I don't assume that everybody will come down in the same way on this. Some will look at this and say, well, I like this. I like the United Methodist Church. I've been United Methodist. We'll just stay United Methodist, status quo. Others will say, I cannot belong to a denomination that's going to continue down this path. And that's the decision you have to make as a congregation. You don't make it as a circuit. You make it as a congregation. So if you're wondering about the decision, there's been several churches, we're talking small and large churches. For example, Alcoa. You know how big Alcoa is. Alcoa, down at our home conference, they're disaffiliating. Now that's a significant church. A lot of smaller churches are. Some smaller churches aren't. Some big churches aren't. And so that's where we are.
What happens to people that don't want to go global, want to stay with the United? What happens to them?
You mean if people...
And if a person, every 6 people in this church don't want to go global,
Right.
they want to stay with, what happens to them?
Well, if the church votes to disaffiliate and transition to the Global Methodist Church, those in the congregation who don't want to or have voted against that would either have to just live with the vote or change congregations. That would be the only two options. Because again, it's a 2/3 vote. It's not a majority. It's not a majority vote, and it's not a 100% vote. It's a 2/3. So it's likely there'll be a few that would not, one or two or more would not vote one way or the other. And that's what you're going to see. You're going to see churches who vote to stay, and there's some people inside those churches who say, no, I can't be part of this. I'm going to go down the road to this church who's decided to disaffiliate. Then you're going to see people who say, well, my church is disaffiliating, but I don't want to. I'm going to go back up here to this church who's remained United Methodist. You're going to start seeing a lot of that over the next 12 to 24 months, shifting. You're going to see some churches who can't afford to pay out, but they don't want to remain United Methodist, and they'll just close their doors. Or they'll just walk away. Or they'll join some other church. You know, Raytown just closed their doors for good. Not for this particular reason, but you'll see people maybe, if it's a small church and a majority of them want to stay conservative, but they don't have the money, they may just say, well, we'll just go down the road to this church who's already, and leave the church building, and that may leave 4 people. And that church can't remain open at that time. And I guess that's what you were addressing earlier, Bill. So there's just right now and after all this is said and done, there's no time limit on when one can disaffiliate. The time limit comes in how one disaffiliates and what it will cost. Because right now the numbers are pretty. What's the word? Pretty. Yeah, and there's, well, stationary. They're not moving. Yeah, they're not. The numbers are not. I mean, the pension changes quarterly just a little bit. The pension numbers, but right now you have a figure. After 2023, who knows? So I can't tell you. The United Methodist Church can't tell you, because until they meet in 2024 and decide with the churches that have not left, who still want to leave or disaffiliate and want them to address it. That's what's not known. So that's where the time limit comes. You can wait 5 years and still join the Global Methodist Church, but whether or not the United Methodist Church will have an option for you to leave without paying full value of the property, I don't know. I mean, and right now, what small church could afford that? So, but let me tell you this real quick. Stone Dam's been here 200 plus years. United Methodist Church has only been here, I've been around since 68, 54 years. So 150 years prior to 1968, Stone Dam was still here, a Methodist church. Just think about that, because disaffiliating or remaining doesn't decide whether or not you're Methodist. It's what you believe, your theology, and so this Stone Dam's been called a lot of things. Right now, it's called United Methodist Church, but it wasn't always called that. It's changed probably, I don't know, half a dozen times over the course of the transition from, when the Episcopal South, Methodist, and Protestant Methodist, all these changes. I don't know the history. You guys probably know that more than I do, but.
How you gonna get your 2/3 though if you don't say everybody votes?
Well, it's 2/3 of the voting of the present voting members, and voting can only occur by those who are on the roll, whose name has to, you have to be a member, join the church, has to be a member on the roll, and you have to be present. If you're not one of those two, you can come, but your vote's not going to be counted. Right now, I think they'll allow you to come. That's what I'm hearing. But only those who are on the roll, who are members on the roll currently, and who are present at the time of the vote. That's the vote, and 2/3 of that vote, or 2/3 of the membership of the church, you know, would be needed to disaffiliate.
And when you got over the roll vote, you never know about what comes and vote.
Well, that's, and I've told Greenwood, I know I've talked to you about this, but Afton, it's up to the board members, and the district has been saying this for a while, that the roll call needs to be your roll needs to be updated, and make sure that the members who are on the roll are active members. Now, I know there are members who are shut in that would be considered, but members who haven't been here for 15, 20 years and are going somewhere else, you know, the board can decide whether or not, you know, they can be removed from the roll, because are they really a member? No, they're not. They're going somewhere else and have been for a long time.
But in theory, it only takes 3 people and 2 voting yes to pass it, right? You have 3 members vote, that's all it's here.
Right, because every church is a different size, so it doesn't matter. The numbers, it's the percentage, right. But it is a good thing to have your rolls caught up and updated and make sure they're up to date. And because I would encourage you, you know, somebody who's not been in this church 20 years, who's still a name on the roll, wants to come in the day you vote and say, I'm here and I'm on the roll, I want to vote. That's not fair. That's not fair to you. That's not fair to, you know, what's the future of this church. So, but then again, you don't want to deprive somebody of a vote who maybe is a member, just has not been able to get here or be here for whatever reason. And again, that's something that, you know, you guys would decide. Yeah. Determine how you want to come up with, like Greenwood did it, and you know, they started out by making active and inactive members. You know, and they started with that, and then they broke it down even further. So, however you want to do that, I think you should do it. So, when it comes time for a vote, if you decide not to disaffiliate, there will be no vote. Will be no need for a vote. So, obviously, the vote is only for those churches who are going to choose to disaffiliate, and a board makes the decision to start the disaffiliation process, but the church has to decide and vote later to disaffiliate. The whole body has to, not just the board. The board is the one that initiates it. So the board, as you representing Stonedam, you are making the decision to or not to, or will. And then once that's happened, if you choose to disaffiliate or start that process, then the church itself will have to vote to make it unanimous, or to make it, legal, or finalize it. Those are the right words? I know. Let me tell you this real quick. I know none of you wanted to be in this position, or I feel for you. You know, in a lot of ways, I stand on the outside looking in and seeing all this stuff, but I see things and I'm thinking, it's I hate it for you. I really do. I hate that you're in this position. But again, this particular congregation has been around over 200 years. And so you've not been United Methodist but for 54 years. So that's not your history. You can decide to stay. You can decide to disaffiliate. There's other options. By the way, I didn't provide them on the paper. There's other options. A few churches are deciding to, and this was before the Global Methodist Church even launched. A few churches decided to disaffiliate and join the Free Methodist or the Evangelical Methodist churches. Free Methodists, I know of a large, significant number of churches early on went that route. Some of them, I've heard, will be transitioning into the global. Some will stay Free Methodist. But the Global Methodist is really the option that's most beneficial, I think, for churches. it's going to be, there's going to be enough Global Methodist churches around this nation to whether, there's a constituency of like-minded churches. There'll be meetings, there'll be conferences, there'll be bishops in place and similar to how it is now. Not exactly, but similar. And so the structure's not going to be that much different. It'll be somewhat different. Any other questions? Make sure. All right.
Thank you, Pastor Rick. He is full of lots of good knowledge and can answer lots of questions, and we appreciate that. So I guess we're at the point in all the things that he talked to us about. If you'll look at the sheet that says call to prayer and discernment, I think we're to the point where we as a church need to decide and vote today if we're going to enter into this time of prayer and discernment. And again, it may not result in anything. It may result in us saying, gosh, we're happy. We love United Methodist, and that's the way we want, and we don't even need to vote on it. It's great. But we may think differently by the end of that process, and it is a process, and there are things that we have to do in that process. And I have put those in red, as you can see. One of the things we have to do is, if we decide to do this today, is notify the district superintendent that we're entering into this period with a beginning date and a possible end date. We need to choose a team the team, and this can be the team, everybody can be a part of it, would choose the model for discernment and submit it to the DS for approval. And I have put a sample, that's back on that page where, it's on the back of that financial paperwork where we looked at that timeline. This is a sample of the bishop's principles for discernment, and that's what we would have to look at. We would have to come up with some model that we would use, and I think this one made the most sense. All of those others are in that 28-page document that I emailed to people. Then we have to meet with the district superintendent or representative to establish a covenant and a timeline, and we'll look at that in a minute. There's a sample timeline for us. Notify all elected leadership and employees of the discernment process and timeline. Notify and invite as many members of the congregation to participate as possible. And so, again, I think that's where we would fall into. Let's look at the members in our church, the list of members as we have it, and figure out, how we can involve them if possible and alert them to these meetings. So that's phase 1, and that's supposed to take a minimum of a month. Phase 2 is prayerful discernment, and the requirements there are only a couple. You have to request the church liability calculations from the conference treasurer's office. That was done for us. This is kind of old. At annual conference, July the 8th was the date that the financial office had to give all churches the listing of the amount that we would owe for pension and liability. And ours, I sent it out in an email yesterday. It's $19,000 and something. I don't remember the rest of it. That's a portion of it. The rest of what we would owe the United Methodist Church is around 2 years' worth of tithes. Okay? So I don't know how that is calculated, but if we look at how much we've tithed thus far this year, we're right at $1,500 in 6 months. So it would be about $6,000 probably, $6,000 to $8,000. I don't know how they determine it exactly. And this very much falls in line. I don't remember the man's name that talked to us about the Global Methodist Church over at Greenwood, but he told us there were 2 ways to figure how much it would cost us. And both ways, it was almost exactly $24,000 So we're talking $24,000 to $25,000. So really, that piece is done for phase 2. And then the other part of phase 2 is that the discernment team will make a final recommendation to the church council. If it is discerned that the church should withdraw from the United Methodist Church, then the pastor shall request a date for a called church conference from the district superintendent. Now, there's lots of other ideas in there that it talks about, trying to have some meetings and some fasting, definitely prayer during this time, possibly, more discussions with our pastor about, it talks about organizing some small group discussions and things like that so that we all fully understand how we feel on these issues. But only those 2 pieces are required in phase 2, and it says that's supposed to take a minimum of 3 months to do that part. And then phase 3 is the church conference, and that is when you would actually invite the district superintendent to the meeting, and we would vote. And then phase 4 is the final withdrawal, and you finalize all your payments. I will say this, I know when we heard some of the churches talking at the meeting at Greenwood, some churches haven't paid their tithes since 2020, kind of in a protest, because, of course, the bishop closed our churches for the pandemic and wouldn't open them back. And some churches just said, well, we're just not going to pay them. Well, that will get added to their totals. So they don't get out of that. There's a bill sitting there waiting on them that will add that amount to what they owe if they decide to disaffiliate. Hallelujah, we've paid ours. And so we don't have to worry about any of that being added to it. So that's kind of, I guess what we need to decide at this moment is, are we going to go into this time of prayer and discernment? Are we going to enter into this that it's going to take us, it looks like, a minimum of 4 months to do these pieces, knowing our timeline of needing to, of course, have made a decision if we want to get it on the agenda for our annual conference for next year of March the 1st. I feel like we can't wait too much longer. But having really no expectation of the end result right now, we should have open minds, and we all have an opinion, but it's this time of self-discovery and discovery within the church of how everybody feels, on this subject, where their heart lies, where their beliefs are, and things like that. So do we want to enter into this time of prayer and discernment? That's the question. And if it's a yes, I need it in a motion. So Terry makes the motion that we enter into this time of prayer and discernment. Do we have a second? Okay, Nancy's going to second it. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. Yeah, you remember, yeah. And all opposed? Anyone opposed? Okay. Now, I want you to go to that next page where there's also some red, and this is what we're going to, we need to put in some dates. So this is where we're going to plan for some things. So if you look, this is a sample discernment covenant that they've given us, and it, again, tells you all of these things, and here's the goals for what we're going to do. We're going to understand the vision and mission of our congregation. Okay, we're going to understand the implications of remaining part of the United Methodist Church or the implications of withdrawing from it. We're going to better understand various stances regarding human sexuality, provide an opportunity for members of the congregation to become more informed, develop a recommendation to the congregation that's acceptable to as many members as possible, and discuss the issue openly, tolerantly, and flexibly in a spirit of Christianity. okay? So if you look down there at phase 1, we're just going to go over these red things. Notify the district superintendent that you intend to enter into a period of discernment. I'm going to put that as tomorrow's days. Today, the 10th, 11th. I will notify her tomorrow that we have voted to enter into this time. Meet with the district superintendent to establish the covenant and timeline for ministry assessment and discernment. In tomorrow's email, I will ask her for an appointment. The next one is notify all elected leadership and employees of the discernment process and the timeline. Our only employee we have is the pastor. And then leadership, elected leadership, it's people that are in leadership roles, I guess, within the church. So we will have done that by tomorrow. And notify and invite as many members of the congregation to participate as possible. So I'm going to put a start date for that of tomorrow. And we're going to stop right there, and I'm going to go to this list of people that are members. Some of the ways that we can notify them is Facebook. A lot of people have Facebook. I can find a lot of people on Facebook and private message them and ask them questions, and most of the time they answer. But I have the list. It is front and back. It's not really, truly that many people. And I'm just going to go down it. Y'all tell me whether you think these people have moved their membership. I feel like several of them have and have never told us. I've got Marlon Collins and Carolyn Collins still on the roll. Karen Richards, Susan James, Joyce Gammon, Judy Campbell Myers, Gail Richards, Vivian Peak, Jean Gammon, Lena Rader, Mark Bender, Hugh Rader Sr. He passed. Did he pass away? Betty Huff, Michael Ragsdale. Is he still alive? Did he pass away? I don't know. I'll put a question mark. Rex Arrington, Dan Riddle, me, my sister Ann, Kenneth Dyer, Kathy Ball. You think Kathy moved her? No, that's you. That's the other. The other Kathy for sure has moved. Peggy Vaughn, Michael Vaughn, Carol Ann Vaughn, Virginia Shelton, Tony Finland, Honey Finland, Norma Hartman, Alan Hartman, Clark Blake. Do you think Alan transferred his membership, Norma, or do you know? Okay. 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 Diane Culler, Mickey Kendrick, Jennifer Malone, and she may have transferred her membership. Rodney Taylor, Jason Taylor. I've got Bob and Vivian Franklin, but they actually transferred their membership to Milburnton, and they've got to transfer it back, is what they've told me. Robert Shipley, Charity Thompson, Carrie Thompson, Bill Teague Jr., Dennis Lockhart, Becky Lockhart, Samantha Renner, Alan Taylor, Brandon Franklin, Heather Lockhart, Pam Lockhart, Courtney Teague, Darlene Lewis, Mitzi Vaughn, Tyler Finland, Tiffany Finland, Emerald Finland, Valerie Lehman, Colt Vaughn, Jamie Vaughn, Suzanne Taylor, Sarah Coffey, Nancy Higginbotham, Justin Laws, Nancy Blankenship, Rick Van Buren, Mindy Van Buren, Mike Emmett, Rodney, Paula, Cheyenne, and Hannah Taylor, but I know Paula, Cheyenne, and Hannah transferred to Greenwood, but I don't know about Rodney. Jerry and Lisa Anderson, Jonathan Joseph Anderson, Chris and Natasha Blakely, Dylan Vaughn. I feel like he's probably transferred his, but I don't have anything that says that. Chad Shelton, Fran Clark, Jim Brown, Darlene, April Brown. And then the prices. The prices are part of the records that are missing. When we had that flood at the parsonage with Todd Adams here, we lost some records. And by the way, thank you to Phyllis Ball and Wilma Taylor for keeping good records. They kept awesome records, so that's why I have this list. I know your whole family. So Tara, tell me who else. Tommy. Raylyn. Okay. That's the list that I have. That's all. Do what? And that could have happened during that time.
We transferred hours from when this happened to here, but that's what's missing. Is those records will be actually transferred, so.
Okay. So really, this is that period of time for people that haven't, I mean, it's a good time anytime to review this list, right? I mean, we should have a long time ago. But I guess the question I want to ask is, what direction do you want me to take in trying to reach out to these people to see if they've transferred membership or if they want to retain this membership? And then, you know, like the preacher said, then we still have to, I mean, we're still going to post on Facebook. I think that's what we should do, is all of our meetings, when they're coming up, and that people are welcome to come. But, you know, when it comes down to a voting member, I mean, are we going to, and maybe this is too early, maybe we shouldn't, it's just something we need to think about. But what are we going to do with that eventually? To a person that hasn't been here in 50 years but might walk back in and place a vote. Because really, if you read what we just said, it's about our congregation, right? It's about exploring our ideas. And so to me, it's more the people that attend actively now. But I understand, you know, we've got to look at the list because they've made that stipulation, not us, that it has to be someone that's on the membership roll. So do y'all think do you want me to pursue some of these people and ask them if they're members? Do you want me to leave it alone? Do you want me to try to clean the list up? What do you want me to do with membership right now?
You think they would come and vote if you check on them?
I think most of those people would not come and vote. But it would just be nice to know if they've transferred their membership, and then I can put it, because here's the thing that happens. Churches just don't send the letter, right? Or they send the letter to the pastor, who never gives it to somebody in the church. And then if you don't have it, if you never see the documents, you can't document what you don't have, right? So that's the problem. I mean, I don't care. Facebook makes this kind of easy. Do what? Okay. Okay, perfect. And I do have some addresses because of the bicentennial, right? I mean, I have some of these people's addresses that, you know, really quick note could go out to, and we could ask them if, you know, if they've joined someplace else or if they want to retain their membership here, and just kind of ask that. Okay. All right.
Just like this, I didn't know, you know, that my records were missing until we started this process. Because to my knowledge, we had transferred our membership, you know, years ago to here, and now I can talk to you, see what do we do about that?
I'll just have to add them back, and I put a note in there that there's records missing for the years. So then I'll just have to add them back. So, and it'll be fine, and I can add Ron okay, and you can ask him, yeah. Okay, all right. Right, okay. So let me work on this list, and then let's talk about it maybe the next time we get together about, okay, so I've whittled down some, now what do we want to do? Do we want to ask some of these people if they want, I don't know how Greenwood went through the process. I guess you just go through the process and say active and inactive, right? People that attend and people that don't. And on their active list are the only people that can vote if it gets that final vote. So we can talk about it the next time after I've gone through maybe a month of figuring out where these people are. Is that good with everybody? Okay. All right. Let's go back to our timeline then. And so we, in terms of request church liability calculations, that's already done. And then There's nothing else that's required in that section. And then provide notice to all members of the congregation at least 10 days, including 2 Sundays prior to the called church conference. So what would be a target date? Let's think about the first thing taking a month. Phase 1's going to take a month, so we're going to say that's 7/11 through 8/11. And the next part's going to take 3 months. So let's say that's August the 11th through November the 11th. So what's our target date if we get to that point of calling a church conference is what they call it? And that would be where we would vote. Do we want to leave it for January, possibly? And not December? Okay. So we'll put January 2023 and then conduct the church conference and we'll just put later in January of 2023. Actually, I'm going to put to provide the notice in December of 2023 or 2022. So in that first bullet, provide notice, we'll put December of 2022 because it says you have to give 10 days, at least 10 days. And then we'll have our church conference in January. And that's one of those that when I talk to the district superintendent, hopefully she'll go ahead and if we say we want to meet with her in January, she at least would give us a date and put it on her calendar. And then if we don't need it, we just cancel if we get to that point. Okay? Now, does all that sound good, that timeline? Because I'm going to get this timeline typed up, and I'm going to get this sent to her tomorrow so we can start our prayer and discernment. I'm also going to work on our list for membership, and then we'll start to advertise. Now, let's talk about a next meeting date. And here's the next question. It talks about having this committee. Do we really want to have a committee as small as we are, or do we just want to invite everybody to come to every meeting? I think we invite everybody, don't you? Okay. So we're not going to have a committee of 6 people. We're just all part of our committee, okay? And let's try to meet in a month. What do you think? Find me a Sunday in a month, Billy, please. Okay. We're going to put August 14th at 12:15. For sure that day we'll go over our membership roll and see where I've gotten on that. I'll talk to you about anything I found out from the district superintendent. And, you know, I will send you anything else I may get from her in email and things like that so you can check it out. Does anybody have any questions?
So just to be clear and concise, since we're entering into this.
Wait a minute, you need to be on the mic, yeah. Mr. Microphone.
I'm the one that said that too. Just to be clear and concise, since we've entered into this period of prayer and discernment, it's not going to stop until the final vote, right? We're not choosing to get out. We're not choosing to stay in. We're kind of just setting this in motion, figuring out all the facts, figuring out how we believe, and then phase 4, I think, is that time in which it'll be decided. Is that correct?
And we don't even have to get to phase 4.
Oh.
If in the meetings, the last meeting we have in phase 3, we're like, you know what? Nobody wants to, we don't want to do anything. We want to stay United Methodist. There's no reason to call a church conference.
Gotcha.
So, it can,
That was
can
my
go
question.
either way.
Could it be stopped, or is there, you go all the way to phase 4, but that's.
Yeah, it can be stopped, I think, if that's what we vote on as a congregation. You know, the preacher did talk a little bit about, you know, the other option out there is independent. You know, you could become an independent church. And, you know, we can talk more about this as we start to share our ideas, but I just feel like Stone Dam Church would not do well as an independent church. It's too small. I feel like all it would take is, a disgruntlement or some upset, and then, and an independent church is heavy on somebody leading it, and, it would almost take a full-time person to, oversee all the things that have to be done. So that's one of the things that, I'm concerned about, but that it's an idea we need to discuss. And the last thing I want us to discuss before we dismiss is a survey. Do we want to do a survey at this point of our congregation and have some of that information to bring back? That it would be an anonymous survey, that it would ask you questions about, maybe take some of the things that Rick put down, and, and the different ideas, and people would mark the beliefs that they have in that, one or the other, and if they're strongly opposed to the Global Methodists, or if they're strongly opposed to the United Methodist, or whatever. So we just have that picture of our congregation. Do you all want to do a survey? I do know that Greenwood's done a survey. I'm not sure about whether Afton has or not, or any of the other churches. Or do we want to decide at the next meeting in a month about a survey?
Oh, sorry.
You don't have to hold it close.
Okay. I agree with Sarah. I think a survey would be good. I think that a survey, we could also get some maybe questions out of the survey that people may not actually want to actually speak up and ask. There could be,
Right.
that involved as well.
Okay. I'll put a survey together that Rick looks at first before it's actually published, but I think it needs to be anonymous. I mean, if anybody wanted to write their name on it, they could, but I feel like people need to have the right to be able to, share their feelings without everyone else knowing. And two more things before we dismiss. The cemetery property is not affected by this. Hallelujah to the men and women in 1969 that decided to incorporate our cemetery, so we don't have to worry about that. It's not part of this. The parsonage, however, is part of this that we have to think about. And I know Pastor Rick said that Afton asked some questions about that. It's jointly owned by us. It's 50-50. It always was. And so, it would take us coming together to decide if there's something that we want to do with that property. Again, not to try to this is kind of invoking some fear, but there are some churches that are putting parsonages up for sale, because right now we have the right to do that. We're still a United Methodist church, and you can vote in a board meeting to decide to sell the parsonage, and you can. And then the money goes into your bank account, and once money's in your bank account, the United Methodist Church does not own that. So that is an idea. However, on the flip side of that, a parsonage is a very attractive thing for pastors. That we're, in the future, if we become Global Methodists, we will be interviewing those pastors. We will be enticing them to come to us and choose us over someone else. And so a parsonage is always a nice thing to have, as part of a package for a pastor. So it's so much to think about that it's almost too much to think about. And I'm just going to go back, for those of you that were in Sunday school today, to David's story. I just feel like we're at the broken down lowest point, and that now we've got to find our way, and we've got to let the Lord fill us, the broken vessel, and drive this and push us in the way that He would have us to go. And sometimes that's where the most beautiful things happen, is in brokenness. And so I do feel like the United Methodist Church and/or our structure is just broken right now. And then it makes us feel that way. But we'll find a way, and I do believe this very firmly. God's going to present a path for us. And we just have to be open to it. We have to look for it. We have to pray for his guidance in this. And that's what I hope we do. I'm going to close the meeting if you're ready to close. All right, sorry.
I just wanted to say also, take the time, if you haven't, and read Pastor Rick's letter. When this all first started, needless to say, I was lost. I mean, I had so many questions, and I had no idea, and when we had our PPR meeting, after he came back from conference, and I learned a lot then, and I'm learning more and more every day, and with this letter, I read it yesterday or last night, that Jennifer had sent out. It is very informational, so if you haven't had the time to read it, Pastor Rick took a lot of time, obviously a lot of time to put into this informational letter, and you'll get a lot of answers from there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, just to touch on more info, if you want to go to globalmethodist.org, that is their official website. They've got up running, and they've got all kinds of different things about resources they have. They're about them, their beliefs, their governance, launch information, frequently asked questions, and leadership, and their mission and vision. So if you want to search that, globalmethodist.org is their website.
All right. I will also tell you that Vivian Franklin has been in touch with Randy Fry. After we had the representative from the Global Methodist Church come, some people said, well, what about the United Methodists? We'd like to hear from them or ask questions of them. We had thought the district superintendent was going to be coming. That was what was originally announced, that she would be coming in meetings of clusters of churches. But now she's been told she cannot come. The only meeting she can come attend is the church, if we have the church council meeting, whatever it's called, for disaffiliation. So we can't get any answers there. So hopefully Randy will be able to come, and he could be one of these meetings that we have and ask some really good questions. Because we do need things from both sides. And yes, Pastor Rick did an excellent job. It took him forever, I know it did. And it helped open my eyes too. So we really appreciate that. All right, let's close our time together in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for these people that have come today to look at our future, Lord, and our future with you. We pray that you will always bless Stone Dam Church, whether it's Stone Dam United Methodist or whatever it is in the future, Lord, that you will just rain down the blessings on this church and its congregation, Lord. Give us a path in which we can walk and make it clear to each of us. Place it on our hearts and in our souls what it is that you would have us do to further your kingdom here on this earth. And we ask all these things in Christ's name. Amen. Sorry it ran over. I didn't know that Rick was going to talk for 30 minutes.